Hi and good afternoon. I'm Lauren Sonnenberg with LifeCore, and welcome to this week's episode of Mind Body Talk on chronic pain. Thank you for joining me here today. And if you're just joining in, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know a little bit about you if you'd like. If you've been suffering with pain for some time, throw a little hand up. And today we're going to be talking about alternatives to opioids for the treatment of pain. And this is a hot topic. It's a big issue and it's prevalent, and people are really looking for solutions. If you take something away from somebody that they are highly dependent upon on any number of levels, one or more levels, then that's scary for people. And if you're somebody who's had opioids prescribed to you for the treatment of your pain, and maybe it's the only thing that ever touched your pain and actually made a dent in it and gave you some relief, if somebody is cutting back on that or taking that off the table entirely, yes, that's very scary. And my goal today is to help viewers to know that there are other options. They might not be the ones that seem most likely, otherwise you probably would have gone that route before, but they're there to be looked at, and it's a process for people. Sometimes you see or hear about something the first time around, and sometimes we kind of close ourselves down to it. Sometimes we're just really ready to hear about it, and sometimes we're just ready to go and do that kind of therapy. So wherever you're at, it's okay, and hopefully you take something away from our discussion today. And if you're joining in late and you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment box, and or if you see this on the replay, feel free to ask questions, put comments in. I'm always happy to respond, and even if I can't address the question during the live broadcast, I will always get back to you afterwards. So I'll first preface, before I get into the mind-body portion of our talk today, that yes, there are forms of natural medicine, whether you are talking about something that you ingest or something that's used topically for relief. There are a number of really helpful products out there that can assist in that. So even though it brings us a little off topic, if I were to go down that path, the reason I'm actually not going down that path is because I want to remain entirely FDA compliant. I don't want to make claims that are not backed up by the FDA. So if you have questions about things to ingest or things to apply, direct message me about that, and to say, I have bodily discomfort, what kind of products would help me for that. And still, just like with opioids, all of those things may be very helpful, and there's nothing wrong with using them. But the challenge here is we generally wouldn't have to keep taking something over and over, whether it's natural or synthetic, if we were actually getting to the root of the pain, or when we're talking about chronic illness, the root of the illness, because pain often shows up, not just pain, but other symptoms, as you well know. So let's dive into our mind-body science, our mind-body treatment pathways that we can take. So first off, it's very helpful to know that when we're talking about a mind-body approach to addressing pain, whether that means starting to shift it, bringing about some relief, and in some cases, eliminating the pain. Regardless of what we're talking about, we have to first know that we are not implying that a person is on purpose causing their pain by not being able to have a strong enough emotional mindset. That's not what we're talking about at all when we're talking about mind body science and mind body approaches to feeling better. And I did a whole video on that, so I don't want to go into all of the nitty gritty. But if you think, oh my goodness, she or people who are talking about mind body approaches to the treatment of pain are accusing people or blaming people for having their pain, that's so far from accurate. And I would love for you to then watch the video that I did called Why There's No Blame in a Mind Body Approach to Chronic Pain. That should be a very helpful start for you if what I was just saying rattled you at all. Okay. And so we march on. That being out of the way, what we have is more than a mind-body philosophy. And there are a lot of them out there, and I don't really think any of them are wrong, but it makes it a lot more specific and predictable and understandable when we have a science that we can turn to understand what is actually happening when people have chronic pain and different types of pain related to different diagnoses will be following different biological programs. Now that's a term that I'm using straight from German New Medicine, GNM. It was a science that was figured out in the late 70s, early 80s by Dr. Hammer in Germany. And he left us with this wonderful medical science that's a total paradigm shift in so many ways from our existent conventional medical paradigm. And so it's not infiltrated the medical schools yet, but there are a lot of people in the world, practitioners and people who are seeking out those practitioners and working with them because the science is there. It's predictable. You can see it on a brain scan. You can see exactly what's going on. You know where you're at in the process. And with these weekly talks, I target and talk about specific symptoms and or diagnoses and go into detail with those various ones. So if you happen to see the ones I've done before, either here or on my YouTube LifeCore Wellness page, then if you have something that you've been experiencing and you don't see a video on that yet, by all means, let me know. And I'm always happy to put together topics of interest that are really going to help my viewers. So you'd be helping me by letting me know what's important to you, then I can in turn try to help you as well. And this is all about education. This is all about learning more so we can understand why we're going through what we're going through on a physical and emotional level. Okay. So here what happens with German New Medicine is that a biological conflict, and I call it a bio-emotional conflict because even though most people are not familiar with that term at all, bio-emotional, it shows that there's an emotional, a psychological, or a part of the psyche involved in that conflict. For example, when you're feeling self-devalued, feeling put down, feeling like you're no longer as functional or as worthy as a person. And that hits a person. It's a biological conflict as well as an emotional one at the same time. So then what we can see are these programs that play themselves out. What happens in the conflict active phase? What happens when the conflict is resolved, if it's resolved? And depending upon the type of pain you have, it would follow a different program, although there are many similarities across diagnoses. But it's not a blanket statement. We have to look at each person, their symptom sets separately. We don't even really we're not so much paying attention to the diagnosis as much as the symptoms, because German New Medicine is going to classify it differently than most of modern medicine. So what if you say, I don't understand any of this, I don't know anybody who does GNM, except for now you've met me online here. But let's just say that's like too far-fetched for you and you're not ready for that. Or you are ready for it. Great. Just keep watching the videos I do on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, or go to the the list of videos I've already done, and you're going to understand it more and more. You're going to understand it more than you even want to, because I go into depth sometimes. But okay, you say, okay, that's nice, Lauren, that's a nice science. What am I going to do with that? Well, with that science, just understanding it alone oftentimes is the beginning of relief for people. And some people just go that pathway, and that's perfectly fine, because there's a therapeutic aspect, there's a therapy that goes along with the GNM science, and we can do that strictly. Now, what I do in my practice, and what you can keep your eyes and ears open for, is even if somebody doesn't know GNM, that would be an added understanding, an added level of the science that would really help you understand why you're having your symptoms and what to do to get rid of them. You can also use energy therapies. Now, in addition to being a psychotherapist, I'm using energy therapies such as EFT and matrix reimprinting. So I work online, so I can work with people everywhere, but maybe you're a kind of person who wants to work with somebody face to face. Well, there are EFT practitioners and matrix reimprinting practitioners all over the world. If you need help with being placed with one of them, let me know. I can reach out to a broader network, and we can find you somebody who will be able to help you with your symptoms. So let me tell you a little bit more about these energy therapies, this EFT. It stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And basically what it is, it's tapping at a number of acupressure points, and I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but if you want to just do one point right now, just to get a feel for it. Now, this is not the whole therapy, so if you're thinking, oh, she's showing me how to do this and this isn't working, that's because I'm just showing you one point and I'm not even using words with it. So here at this collarbone point, kind of about an inch down and an inch out from your collarbone nubs here, you could just tap with 2 fingers, or some people use all 5 of them. And what you'll notice, I'm not asking you to even notice a shift in your pain, but what you'll notice after doing this for 30 seconds or a minute is you're going to notice yourself starting to calm down, because it lowers your cortisol levels, okay? And it's proven, they've shown it, there's science behind this too. So that alone can show you a piece of this, just to understand one little sliver of why EFT works so well, okay? And what we do is we track back, and I'm giving you the quite oversimplified version, but we track back to, okay, what was going on in your life when the pain started? What happened right before it? What got worse? What got better? What's still going on for you? And very simply, there are events that, even if they don't even stick out in the mind right away, as we start to tap on the pain, and when I say on the pain, I don't mean on the location of the pain, I mean on the topic of the pain. For example, this red hot shooting, stabbing pain in my low back. As we start to do the tapping, the EFT tapping on that, paired with the words that we're saying, what we find are a number of things can happen. The pain can start to shift. It might, for a little moment, escalate before you start to bring it down in that round or two of tapping. It can start to go down. It can bring up emotions. It can bring up events that are related to that emotion. And that's why it's very important to do this work with somebody who is skilled at it, because it can very easily bring up big traumas or small traumas from the recent past or the far distant past, like childhood, for example, depending upon how old you are. We'll make it how far in the past it was, but you know what I mean. And so that can be overwhelming for a person. And so really to be working with a practitioner who understands this, who can handle and delicately walk you through that process is going to be absolutely fundamental to the success of your outcomes to having a successful outcome with your treatment. I'm saying treatment because I'm a psychotherapist, but an EFT practitioner wouldn't use that term if, just through the EFT process. So, and that being said, not to get too technical on you, but it is a very powerful tool. And even if a person hasn't looked at mind-body approaches to their chronic pain before, people know one thing. They know they have an emotional response to having the pain, like frustration because functionality in life is impacted negatively, or frustration, hopelessness, anger, that this pain just won't go away. And then you add in an opioid crisis where your lifeline to the medications that you have become used to and that you rely on are reduced or taken away. This then brings about all the fear with it. So as you can see, just on that level alone, there is this huge amount of emotions. And so, yeah, those are very important to tap on too, because no panic, no fear is ever going to support anybody's healing process, no matter if you're going through a cancer diagnosis or whether you really have any diagnosis with fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. No, doesn't matter what it is. Or even a strictly what would be considered mental health issue, like bipolar, for example, where you might not have pain, or you may, but fear, when our medications are taken away, it's very fear producing, and there's just so many emotions around chronic pain and illness. So we need to address those, and then we need to address where it stemmed from. Why is it persisting? Sometimes just having the pain itself is its own conflict on so many levels. And then we have to address that. We have to address the underlying, what biological or bioemotional conflicts set this ball in motion. And there are so many pieces along the way, other components that can be wrapped in as or folded in as extra triggers as well. For example, somebody with migraines, they may have a weekend trigger. For example, every time they hit the weekend, something goes on there, okay? Or certain smells, certain perfumes, or foods that cause people to have more of a response, whether it's migraines or their chronic pain. And then people are very aware of, oftentimes they're very aware of certain events in their life that do cause flare-ups. They know when they're stressed, specific stressors. They know there are a lot of events that happen in a person's life that they are able to easily link to pain flare-ups. And so it's the unraveling that ball of yarn and really getting down to the nitty-gritty. And this may sound like it's very intensive, long work. And I will tell you this. Intensive in the sense of you may have to uncover some deeper emotional, you might have to go to some places in the past that you might have shied away from, or you thought maybe you had dealt with entirely, but they still may linger. And in fact, it's very interesting. People have gone to therapy sometimes for 10 years, but they haven't done EFT on it. And it's a different type of therapy. It just gets in on a level that it's not just a cognitive, it actually gets in on that deeper emotional level and on a cellular level, in fact, as well, too. And it's It's just a real whole body type approach to clearing out the blockages that we have that keep us from being able to be free of our symptoms and to move forward without the, let's call it, emotional anvils that people carry around. And when people have done their work, they're carrying around either lighter ones or they get rid of them. And that's the beauty of this. So in terms of how long does this process last for people, how long is treatment, it varies. Some people respond really quickly. I would say, if you're somebody who's, I'm just going to pick a random number, if you're in your 70s and you have decades and decades and decades of emotional traumas and physical issues, it may sometimes be a more complicated situation. It may take a little longer. It may not, but I'm being realistic here. I generally know that the longer we've been around, more stuff has come up for people. And so is it an overnight one session, hey, we're done? No, it's not. But here's the thing. It's much better to see the progression of the reduction of symptoms and feeling better emotionally, physically, spiritually, and see that happen than to see something stay the same or get worse. So this is what you have. You have hope. There is this wonderful option. It's really a couple of options I talked about today, but I in my own practice present it really as ultimately one kind of one approach that it comes out. It comes together. It works together. So now I did talk about the matrix reimprinting, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail with that, but that really allows us to, it's another tool in our toolbox to go in and really resolve old traumas, whether they're large or small, and also allows us to address the limiting beliefs that we have that have been set in place along the way that really impact our lives. Now, let's give an example. And you can be using the EFT to work on this too. Let's say somebody knows that they don't feel that good about themselves. Their self-worth isn't that great. Let's just say it was okay, but then when their pain started coming about, and then they had it for a year, and then they had it for 2 years, and it's 3 years, and now they're really feeling more and more down on themselves because quality of life's gone down, their relationships have suffered, and maybe they're not able to work like they were before, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's say they say, okay, you know what, my self-esteem was okay, and now it's down pretty low. So if that person is somebody who has pain that comes about in this cycle related to the biological or bioemotional conflict, such as one of self-devaluation, as you can see, they'd be stuck in a vicious loop if that conflict of self-devaluation is perpetuated just by nature of having not feeling well because of their illness, even if the original conflict or conflicts no longer exist. So you can see how easily things become perpetuated and how people have chronic pain instead of an acute pain episode, and we move on happily with our lives. So we must break that cycle. And thankfully, we have tools that do that. And I totally get it that one, it costs money, and a lot of these treatments and approaches are, some of them, depending upon who's doing them, depending upon if they take insurance, depending upon a lot of factors, some of them are covered, some of them aren't. And that's a challenge for many, many people. It's a legitimate thing. If you don't have the money, it makes it very hard to go and get that treatment. That's one of the reasons I created a free mind-body chronic pain group. And I mean, not giving you treatment in the group, but it's a support group. It's an empowerment group to help at least give you direction, to answer your questions, to help you to understand what's going on with your chronic pain, what's going to help you to start to break out of that cycle. And there are other things I'd like to do to help people, even people who aren't able to just do one-on-one sessions down the road, even if it's a training program to kind of help a person get into the nitty-gritty and to understand it a little bit more than just like a 30-minute presentation like here. So all your questions in that group are always welcome. I'm always happy to see people post and to ask the questions, because ask and you will receive. I will give you what I can give you. I promise I will. And I love helping people. I love this profession, and it's so nice to see people have breakthroughs, and it's nice to see people supported by one another even in their rougher times. And so even though we have this thing called an opioid crisis, there's the opioid epidemic, and people can't get their medications, and this is really kind of such a powerful time for a person that has such an impact on people. But let's go a little deeper here. Let's go a little psycho-spiritual just before we wrap it up. When doors in our lives close, it is without fail, it is inevitable that new doors open up. Whether it's one door or many doors, it doesn't matter how many. It matters that we trust in our gut and in our heart that that pathway that is being presented to us, or options, those pathways, are going to be okay for us. And we leave our fear at the door, and we say, let me take this leap of faith. Let me try this. And sometimes those doors are right in front of us, and we just won't walk through. We just won't walk through. And, that's where you should reach out, ask questions to people. Certainly if people schedule a free 15-minute wellness consultation with me, it's free, and it's not like you're locked into a 10-session package then. You can ask questions, and I'll help you and guide you to what could work for you based on your financial position, based on your lifestyle, based on what you need, based on your geographical location. I'll help you as much as I can. And so it's there, the options on the table. So doors open up when doors close. It is without fail. We leave our eyes open, we'll see those doors when they open. And so when you're scared, when you're at a loss, when you're feeling hopeless, helpless, powerless to deal with your pain, perhaps the doors are opening for you because you're meant not to just replace opioids with something else and or get the opioids back into your life, which is obviously kind of fraught with a lot of challenges because people can get highly addicted. And I worked as a clinical director of 2 substance abuse facilities, so I understand that so many people start off taking opioids for their pain, and then it becomes an addiction, and then you have a much bigger issue on your hands as well, and it just compounds things. So trust that if these doors are closing, as challenging as it may be in the moment, and it is, that there are other options. And that's why I did this presentation today. It's why I wanted to talk to you and show you that there are some options for you, and they work really well. And you know what? Just an AA phrase came up, and I don't really want to steal the AA phrase, but I'm just going to, since it may apply to a lot of people out there, or NA for that matter. It works if you work it. And you know, these therapies do. That means you have to be on board. You have to do it more than one session, and you just need to be open to seeing not only your symptoms changing for the better, but also your emotional well-being changing for the better. And that means life's doors open up. Then we start to see job opportunities, relationship possibilities, that those doors weren't open before, and changes that occur in people's lives in small and big ways. And so stay open. That's what I'll end this on. Stay open and let the world bring you what you've been asking for. And it may not be the very thing you've been asking for, but it may provide a solution to you that you did not expect. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.